Hello, hello. Once again, it's Kin Lane, API Evangelist. I'm here for another one of my API Evangelist conversations where I just invite folks by who are doing interesting things with APIs. Let's dive in, see who we got today. Hello, who are you?
Hey Ken, I'm Mark. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Scalar.
Nice. I'm a fan of Scalar. You're kind of moving forward I would say the API client, but there's more to it, I know, and I think we'll get into that. But you got some interesting kind of views and approaches around, what clients are for, what how people are using them, and what specs go into them. So tell us about Scalar. What is it? Why are you building it?
Mhm. Yeah, so Scalar's focused all around OpenAPI. So we're trying to build tooling to make documenting, testing, and then eventually discovering APIs easier. And that's all built on the OpenAPI standard. So we started with building beautiful API references. So if you're familiar with Swagger UI or Redocly, we built an alternative to that. That's become very, very popular. And inside of it, we have a deeply integrated API client. And if you're familiar with API clients, usually they're for testing your APIs, whether that's HTTP based or maybe real time based messaging. And usually they're kind of there's a few open source options, and that's great. But the big difference for Scalar is we keep the OpenAPI document alive. So when you import your OpenAPI collect or document, we actually don't like fully dereference it. We keep it alive. And then also if you're just using the API client ad hoc testing APIs that maybe aren't originally from an OpenAPI document, you can actually export it as an OpenAPI document. So pretty much like bring an OpenAPI document to Scalar, you can document it, get an API client for your team to all collaborate on, and you just keep that document alive. So
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, I came in, I opened up an intro, as far as the client and came in that doorway because I mean, deliberately, I mean, one, take a shot at Postman because of my history. But I think it's how people see clients is they see it through that testing doorway. And you guys are much more than that as far as the documentation, as far as the referencing and dereferencing and kind of the respect for the open API definition, which I haven't seen before. So why build around the open API spec?
well, firstly, my co-founder and I, Cam, just love open source, and something more that we love than open source are just great standards. So when you have a wonderful open source open standard to define an API that's completely agnostic of the language you're building in, can't really get much better than that. And one of my favorite things actually about OpenAPI is sometimes the fact that when people don't even know that they're leveraging it. So a lot of wonderful backend frameworks like Fast API, Lightstar, um, and now .NET with version 9, they automatically generate OpenAPI documents right for you, right when you're building your code. So you don't even have to think about it. And what's cool about that is you get all these sweet second order um, bonuses. So you can quickly document with Scalar your API. You can quickly use your API client to live test your API as you're building it. If you need to generate SDKs, you can go and take that to a ton of wonderful open source ones. There's also like, Speakeasy, Stainless, and Fern. And there's just like, I think Hey API is one for TypeScript. There's all these great SDKs. If you need mocking, you kind of unlock this huge engineering velocity from just adopting this standard. And yeah, I'm a really, really big fan of open source. So having the standard being open source is wonderful too.
Yeah, it gives you a pretty big leg up into existing enterprises, and it's in wide motion. It's adopted, so you're better off building around it rather than trying to reinvent the wheel there. And so, but the way you're describing it is it sounds like primarily your customers are API producers, but you're coming at it from a very client perspective, a consumer. So uh, who's your customer? Or is it primarily a producer and you're trying to get them in a consumer mindset, or is it both?
It's both. And one of my favorite parts about APIs too, and this is one of the things that Cam and I, when we were thinking, so our first company we started called Launchico, and we sold to Namecheap, and that company was a website builder all focused around accessibility and making it as easy as possible to build a website. So when we were looking at starting Scalar, we were like, why aren't APIs as accessible as they could be? And there's all these jumping off and like hook points for someone integrating an API, whether that's like an internal consumer or producer, but then also the external facing. So maybe that's really great docs, really great SDKs, a really great testing client integrated with the API, and you as the API producer having all these resources available for your consumers in an easy way to consume just makes that for that time to 200 like as short as possible, right? So what we found is a lot of our customers and users are producers, but now, since we're on both sides of it, the consumers of it are coming into Scalar as well to easily adopt any API that they're interfacing with that is hopefully on the open API standard.
Yeah, it's an important kind of distinction. It's one of the reasons I think Postman hit so hard is because it was coming from the consumer primarily standpoint, but it hit a lot of producers testing, and then kind of exploded from there. And so what you're kind of describing is, I think, a much more nice balanced approach to this, where everybody should be kind of a producer and consumer and have that mindset. But one concern I have is I worked with a lot of customers. Talking to enterprises when I worked at Postman, and they were product people, they were support people. I even worked with sales people. So do you think is Scalar just for engineers, or do you think these folks can get in there as well?
Yeah, one of us mentioning kind of the thread that we pulled on when we started Scalar was all around accessibility and making APIs as accessible as possible. So right now, primarily focus on engineers, but we have some pretty cool ideas, all around large language models and how models are able to interact with APIs that we think will unlock. It's kind of like the retool, but for APIs, so people can come in and build whatever they need to or whatever they want to interface with APIs that are maybe internal or external facing. So today, more so engineering, but I would say at the end of this year, if hopefully we do another one of these, I'll probably talk a lot about how it's maybe the whole stack of the team.
I like that. I like that. And one of the, I don't know what I'd call it. It's not challenges or illnesses or legacy things of docs is because they're sold by API management providers and it's very bundled. They're often anchored to a portal. So you publish docs to a portal, but you're a client. You're very different approach to kind of seeing and making it work with an API. So how do you envision where are people publishing docs and using Scalar, and how does all that work?
Yeah. So what we really enjoy right now is we have like two parts of Scalar. We have the cloud hosted offering, and then we also have the open source version. And our API client is fully offline, built off open standard, and it will be offline first forever. We want people to be able to, if they need to, publish their API docs right from the client. But all of that kind of goes to this like centralized dashboard that we have on the cloud. So a common issue with apps that you love, you could name any of them, is over time, more enterprises come in and you're building for not only just like the smaller teams, SMBs, mid markets, but then you're kind of building for enterprises. And a typical feeling that people have for apps that they loved is like it feels bloated, or maybe there's all this stuff that they don't need. So for us, it's when we build our products, we really emphasize on having them be able to stand alone on their and do exactly what they're meant to be. But if we want to do more, we kind of integrate it into this dashboard and this centralized place for managing all your open APIs or publishing right from there. So we keep the dedicated apps simple and straightforward. Whereas when you go and you want to do more, let's just say mocking, open API linting, or managing of your open API documents, we wouldn't jam that in the client per se. Just like how when you're writing docs, we don't want to do all of that in there as well. It's And this is something Cam and I have a lot of experience with when we built our website builder. We built a really popular logo maker as well. And those two products can stand on their own, but when they're deeply integrated in a meaningful way, it's like magic. So
yeah. I mean, you went. I'm less diplomatic and political than you are, but like Postman, Insomnia, Kong, Smart Bear, like it's pretty par for the course for these things to kind of shift over time and change based upon business model and that's kind of why I alluded to it with API management. It's not exclusive to them. Apogee, Mastery, all these companies, it's how you do business. And so talk to me about the relationship between how you guys are going to make money and how you see your open source and how you see this cloud versus local.
mhm. So for us, what I really love about Scalar and why we built like this open source company is the things that we're open sourcing can fully live on their own, and we would never want to monetize exactly that. So what we really see the power in for Scalar and what we're seeing for how we do make money is for enterprises to come in and manage, version, document all of their APIs on our cloud offering, and that would never seep into our off like any of our open source. Like you should think of it as, or we can think of it as the things that we open source are really powerful tools, and then the cloud offering is okay. Now we're putting this in a toolkit that is fully managed, maintained by Scalar, that large enterprises don't need to worry about and can just focus on bringing in their OpenAPI documents and none of the extra stuff that goes into it. But the nice part is if you want to fully self-host Scalar, like you can go and do that, and we would never try to monetize on that. So again, it's kind of like this registry and OpenAPI document management, and then we kind of take that and go to the second order effects of, okay, you want docs, okay, you want a testing client, and you want that feedback loop back in.
Yeah, it's important that I think that open source, local, bottom up, developer focused is a super powerful way to build tools and grow it. But at some point, you got to have that connecting of the dots. You got to have that that top down what IT leadership or engineering leadership is going to care about, and that's definitely what's going to end up making you guys money. And finding the balance over time is really where it's at with this. Um, but so what's the roadmap look like? What's on your horizon? What's lighting up your imagination right now with Scalar?
Those are great questions. Right now, there's kind of like on the micro level where we're shipping a lot of features for our open source community around multiple OpenAPI documents. This one I'm actually like on the short term, I'm super excited about this one. It's our most requested feature, specifically in the .NET community, which has been absolutely wonderful for us to be a part of. And we're trying to hit HTTP parity with other API clients, which will be done by the end of this month. Longer term, what we really see Scalar as, and what we're seeing it happen now for the rest of the year is a place where companies bring their APIs to and think of OpenAPI. And when they are looking for things around OpenAPI, whether that's docs, client, SDKs, anything that they need for their API, they come to Scalar. And we're seeing that. And so the kind of roadmap around all of our products is really just honing in on that. So we did a lot of building last year, introducing like the new client. And this year's a lot of refinement and really bringing in all those products together in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I like it because I'm always fascinated by how folks see or don't see Open API, and it kind of goes all the way back to Swagger land, and the original Swagger was just a config file for Swagger UI and Swagger CodeGen, and so it wasn't even a spec; it was just an afterthought of this JSON config file for your docs, and it's evolved over the year, and it became its own spec, and so seeing a lot of people selfishly see what they want in the Open API spec. This is docs. This is security, this is testing. And so I think you're really, sensibly kind of covering that landscape when it comes to it. And so yeah, I think your roadmap sounds pretty solid. What keeps you coming in every day building Scalar?
Yeah, that's, oh my gosh. So for me, one of my favorite things about working on Scalar is really just being able to, it's like the quintessential like building something that people want. I think it's like the YC one, but it's like we didn't go through YC, but it's such a good one. For us, it's, we have such a high impact because not only does the product we build help the engineering, like the producers, but it also impacts and makes consuming the API so much better. So pretty much every sales call, every customer support thing is around trying to make their APIs more accessible and consumable or producible. So, and it's just been so wonderful to see the diversity of types of customers and just like APIs that we're going. Like I couldn't even, when we started this 2 years ago, I wouldn't have even been able to guess that we would be helping with like incredibly large shipping freighter companies. Like that wasn't even in my radar. Like I didn't even think that APIs were used in that regard, but they are heavily. And so, but then going from that to really early startups that are trying to like make their docs and SDKs awesome. So for me, it's really all around the users and customers, and we've built like an incredible team at Scalar. So I'm saying this from an incredibly privileged position. We have unbelievable, you can go look at our GitHub and all the open source contributions that are coming in from the whole team at Scalar. It's yeah, those two, we've created this just the dream kind of work environment for Cam and I, and yeah, I'm super grateful for that.
Yeah, you guys got the good energy, and you're focused, and you got the right balance of open source. You're respecting the open API, which I see a lot of players come in and not really fully understand and get the power and the kind of potential of that, and you're getting people excited. So I think that's what's going to matter the most. But look forward to following you as you guys keep growing and keep building what people want. I appreciate you coming by.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ken. This was awesome. It was great chatting.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good stuff. I love the enthusiasm. I love the excitement. I love the kind of balanced approach to open source, top down, bottom up, keeping people happy, keeping people excited. It's a good balance, and definitely check it out because that open API kind of core is key. It's really what folks are needing. So good stuff. All right. Catch you all later. Thanks.